Hello, welcome back. This is a new series, Series 2. It is a rebranded podcast. It was The Business Greenhouse with Emmy Faust, and now it is starting to scale with Emmy Faust, the podcast for founders who are starting up or scaling up. Just quickly, if you hear noise or little chattering in the background, that'll be one of my 4 kiddies. We are in lockdown at the moment for COVID-19, and I just need to get this introduction recorded so I can get my podcast episode out. And they've been running around outside and I haven't managed to find a quiet time, so I'm just going to get on and do it. I'm Emmy Faust, and in my 20 years experience of starting, scaling and selling businesses, I've learned a lot, and generating profit is obviously super important, and that is one of the main reasons that most people have a business. But it's also about having fun, making a positive impact, and genuinely caring about everyone your company impacts, including yourself. So today's episode is really relevant. It's Elise Finn, who is a personal business and marketing coach. She's very well respected, highly regarded. She shares her thoughts and insights on managing your emotions, and that is particularly relevant at the moment. We're in the middle of COVID-19 coronavirus, and for business owners, that is super stressful. Thinking about the future of your business, your staff, your cash flow, and all of those things. So hopefully this will shed some light and give you some food for thought, and let's get on with the show. Thanks so much, Elise. So today on the podcast, I have got Elise Finn. Hi, Elise. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Hi, Emmy. Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. I am a huge fan of podcasts. I think I was one of the very early adopters from the very early days. So now I think there are gazillions of podcasts that are available to us. So it's a great media. So who am I? I'm Elise Finn. I'm a personal business and marketing coach. I have a bit of an eclectic background, which kind of talks to that order of personal business and marketing. And maybe just as a couple of minutes, I should talk about that so you get a feel for who I am.
That'd be great. Yeah.
So I have an entrepreneurial background. I was the only one in our very large family of 5 siblings to not leap into running my own business. Both my mum and dad ran their own business, and I grew up around a kitchen table that was full of conversations about cash flow and staff and stock and all sorts of other things. But seeing as my dad ran an ice cream business and my mum ran a toy shop, I was also pretty popular as a kid in the playground too. So I was spoilt with the entrepreneurial upbringing, but then I went into corporate life, and my functional area is marketing. I spent 33 years climbing the corporate ladder, ended up as kind of like the top of my tree, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, for a large part of the Thomson Reuters business. Throughout that experience, I worked always for big businesses and mostly in financial services, but also in intellectual property, in media and design as well. I've seen so much change and challenge throughout my corporate life. I was CMO for the financial part of the Thomson Reuters business during the 2008-2009 crisis. I've been on executive teams that have sold and bought businesses that have had to make massive organisational changes as a result of financial crisis and other changes and challenges. So yeah, I've had a really interesting corporate career, which I left 3 years ago. And I decided that I wanted to start a completely new chapter, pivot my career away from marketing, although I don't think that I will ever leave marketing completely because it is almost part of my DNA, but to become a business coach. Business runs through my veins. It is where I was born and brought up, and it's where I have grown up and become now middle-aged. You reminded me of that as we started this.
You look amazing.
Well, thank you. I am 54. I have 3 children and a grandson. So throughout my career, I've also juggled family life, being married, you know, and all of the stresses and strains that comes with that. So I became a business coach, but with a very personal slant. So I describe myself as a personal business and marketing coach, because I think that business is personal, because it starts with us and it starts with the relationships, no matter where you are, which business you're running, and you know, what organization you're working in, from one man band where the most important relationship is with yourself, up to, you know, huge 50, 60,000 people organizations where your most important relationship is still with yourself, because that is where we all start.
Really, I totally agree with that. So we were talking earlier about the current situation, because when we're recording this, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, and we're talking about founders and business owners who are either sort of starting up or scaling up, and they're trying to secure investment potentially or close funding rounds. And you know, this is such a challenging time for business owners in particular. I mean, obviously it's challenging for everyone, but not only are they thinking about their own business, they've got their staff to worry about. And you were talking about how to manage your emotions in these challenging times, and I'd just love you to chat to us a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I said earlier that the most important relationship we have is with ourselves, and that starts with our emotions, because our emotions are what ultimately, if we don't have them under some measure of awareness and control, drives our reality, because our emotions really dictate our beliefs, and our beliefs dictate our actions, and our actions create our reality. So the main source, the root cause, if you like, is our emotions and our thoughts. And those two things are very bound up together, because our thoughts create our emotions. So if we want to change our reality, if we want to affect positive change, we need to make sure that we're aware of and managing our emotions and our thoughts. And I think that a lot of people think that they can't do that, that our emotions are out of control, that we just feel what we feel. And I think to a certain degree that is true, because as human beings we're kind of rational pretending or trying to be, we're emotional pretending or trying to be rational, but there is a lot of work that we can do internally once we're aware of how our emotions affect our outcomes, that can really help us get the right outcome. Right. So there are two types of change here, and I think that it's important for us to understand that. For entrepreneurs, you know, we're always driving for positive change, or what I would call chosen change. You know, you want to grow your business, or you want to sell your business, or you want to get funding for your business, or you want to move into a new sector or launch a new product. That is chosen change. But there's also in the background as well plenty, even in normal situations, there's plenty of unchosen change. You know, there's fluctuating interest rates, there's things that are happening through globalization all over the world that will impact our business from the outside in a way that we wouldn't have chosen. And I think that we've seen with, you know, the coronavirus, that on a you know, huge, massively unparalleled scale. And that unchosen change is kind of crashing into our world, and you know, potentially completely making a calamity around what might be our plans, our chosen change. So it can be a very emotionally disruptive time on what in an entrepreneurial journey is also quite tricky anyway, even when it's going really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of challenging, isn't it? And stressful, it can be stressful and overwhelming, as you said anyway, and then you get something like this chucked at you, and I think it can be a real struggle.
Yeah, it can. So what can we do about it?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, the good news is we're not helpless, you know. I think that one of the things that we can do is tune into our emotions and understand that emotions are a bit like urges, you know, that they ride a wave. They don't stay forever. Our emotions come and they go. And so we don't necessarily need to act on an emotion in the moment just because we're feeling it. You know, and you know, this kind of harks back to a lot of the work that you might have heard about through anger management and so on. If you feel angry, okay, feel angry, but you don't actually need to act out that anger. You can, there are tools that you can use to calm yourself down and take yourself away from that emotion and into a different emotion. And it's exactly the same with any other emotion. If we're feeling, very fearful, very scared or shocked, we don't need to act on that emotion. We can feel it, recognize it, and then move through it, and only take action when we're in a positive place with our emotions, where we know that the outcome is going to have a better effect for us and our business. So I think that's the first thing I would say is, being aware of it, and also knowing that it won't last forever.
Well, that's a good thing to remember, isn't it? That it won't last forever. But
yeah,
how do you do that process then? You kind of you said, about how if you're feeling angry, you're aware of it, but then you don't let it come out. How do you do that?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that I would always encourage us to do is to get quiet and to feel the emotion. So not to try and squash it or act it out, to try and get through it, but to actually just get quiet and feel the emotion. And one of the easiest ways to do that is and you can just do this in a few minutes, is just to get quiet, breathe, and ask yourself, what am I feeling? And label it. And there's some great research out there which tells us that we are really bad now at being able to label our emotions. I think the average number of emotions that people are able to label kind of off the cuff is about 7. But we have a massively full range of emotions. And I have a really cool tool, which is the emotional wheel, which has a much fuller range of emotions. If you'd like to have that in the show notes, I'm very happy to give it to you.
I was going to say, that'd be brilliant if we can link to that, the emotional wheel there. Definitely.
Yeah, so basically the first thing is to label it, to understand, where am I on this emotional roller coaster, and to allow yourself to feel it. Because if you allow yourself to feel it, the experience will pass more quickly. That's what the research tells us. If we try and squash it, distract ourselves, that emotion is still there, but it will continue for a longer period of time. Okay, so if we can feel it, then label it, and then ask yourself, what do I need to move through this? If it's an unhelpful emotion, obviously if it's joyful and positive and lovely, then you don't want to move through it. You want to prolong that moment. But if it's an unhelpful, negative emotion which you feel is going to hold you back or take you down a route to create a reality you don't want, pick a fight with your shadow or your partner or your child or whatever, and you don't want that as an outcome, then ask yourself, what do I need to move through this? And quite often the answer will come to you, and it might be really simple. It might be go for a walk. It might be, punch a pillow. It might be have a cup of tea. It might be ring my best friend and download. But asking yourself, what do I need to move through this, actually takes you into positive action.
That's a good point. Really good. So is just by doing that process, are you then free of the...
I wish, because we're emotional beings trying to be rational, right? Yeah. So I think in the moment, yes, that really does help. Being able to understand it's going to pass, and I can help that process by just taking these few simple steps of listening, labeling, and asking myself what I need right now. So I think as a response in the moment, it really does help. But I think for a longer term strategy, and as we as entrepreneurs, we need to be resilient. We need to be able to ride these waves of emotion on a regular basis, because we haven't chosen an easy path.
No.
And we want to move ourselves into positive mindset, positive action, as regularly as we can, as regularly as we need to. So I think there's another tool that I can also share with you, which I call the adversity triangle. And if you imagine a triangle, it's just you working through 3 questions, 3 stages, 1 at each point in that triangle. And the tip of the triangle is acceptance. And I find this incredibly useful when I am in a very highly stressful situation, or where I've just received bad news. So your funding round has just collapsed, or, you know, your biggest customer has withdrawn or gone bust, or, you know, whatever that experience of the bad news is coming at you. The first question is all around acceptance. What do I need to accept? And for us to be able to get to that, there's a really powerful question, which is, what is outside of my influence of control? You know, what do I just need to accept? Because I just can't control it. No matter what ideas I come up with, there is this immovable thing in my life now that has happened. A good example of that is coronavirus, right?
Exactly.
We can't, there's nothing we can do. We have to accept it.
I've had clients I've had a client and all her clients and all her suppliers have closed down. So, you know, that's a prime example, isn't it? There is nothing she can do about that.
Right. Okay. And she's probably gone through the full gamut of emotions around shock, denial, anger. There's a spiral of negative emotions in there that she will be experiencing. And one of the things that she can do to help herself in this moment is just write down everything, literally pen and paper, old fashioned, get it out of you, around what you can't control. Because that helps us move into acceptance, and it actually unburdens us. It allows our brain to just dump it, offload all of that. And then the second point of the triangle, you're starting to move into, what do I need to do from here? And the second point of the triangle is all around self-care, because remember I said from the very beginning, the most important relationship we have is with ourselves. If the relationship we have with ourselves is in some way undermined, then we can't possibly hope to have really positive, good, engaged outcomes with others, because we're starting from a negative place. So the second point of the triangle, all about self-care. And the question here is, what can I do to take good care of myself? Because whilst we know that self-care is important, under times of stress and strain and challenge, that's exactly when it goes out the window.
Yeah, totally.
You know, we turn to our usual crutches of whatever that usual crutch is, you know, binge watching Netflix, or, you know, eating 5 tubs of Ben and Jerry, or reaching for too many glasses of wine, or, you know, whatever. We all have them. And we can't pretend that we don't. But removing ourselves from that is a really useful thing to do, by asking this question: what can I take good care? What do I need to take good care of myself now? I was just going to say, I've noticed that during this time I've been doing less mindfulness and meditation, and actually that's kind of when I need it. But it's because I felt like there's been more pressure, you know, got all the kids, trying to look after the kids, doing my work, and actually yesterday I was like, my goal today is actually just to spend some time doing some mindfulness. Brilliant. Well done. That is solidly in that you know, second point of the triangle around what can I do to take good care of myself. There's another question there as well, which I think certainly as women entrepreneurs we are very bad at asking, which is, what requests can I make of others? Especially if you are kind of like an A-type entrepreneur, you know, always driving for outcomes that you feel are a direct result of your ambition, of your action. What requests you can make of others is a really powerful way of actually looking after your own self-care, because you're saying, I can't and I won't be able to do this all on my own.
I love that question.
And then the third part of the triangle is where a lot of conversation has been at the moment, and I think this is a really positive thing, but it's an ongoing question, I think, especially during times of stress and challenge, which is gratitude. What am I grateful for?
Love gratitude.
Because if you have just received some really bad news, that's where your cognitive processes are. That's your brain is just consumed with the bad news. So what you're doing through this process is actually saying, it's not all bad news. You're allowing your brain to explore, and sometimes this can be really, really hard to answer when you're really deeply in denial or shock or anger around some bad news. But what am I grateful for? Because there'll be things in your life that you are still solidly grateful for.
I love that.
And then a second part of that question, and again, I always add this in for my female clients, is what am I grateful to myself for? Because we're always very good at naming the things that we are grateful for around our situation. I'm grateful for my husband, my children, my house, my garden, the fact that my parents are well, I can be grateful for those things. But what am I grateful to myself for?
Yeah, because we're sometimes not kind to ourselves. Sometimes we don't, say well done for being an amazing mum and doing all the other things we do. And yeah, that's a good.
Exactly. And one of those things that you could be grateful for, Emmy, for example, is knowing yourself well enough that you need to get back to mindfulness.
Yeah. It was listening to a podcast from someone which kind of triggered it. And I thought, I'm doing too much work, focusing on work too much, and I'm not focusing on everything else enough. And I know when I do my mindfulness, that's when I'm at my best. So I love that triangle. Did you create that triangle yourself? I've never heard of it before.
I've added in, it's quite well known and used as a tool amongst coaches. I've added in some additional questions, that I like to ask my clients, because my clients tend to be either entrepreneurs running their own businesses, female entrepreneurs running their own businesses, or female professionals in corporate jobs like the CMO role that I've been in. And I very much want to connect with them on a personal level so that I can help them within their business or within their marketing, because business is about relationships, and our most important relationship is with ourselves.
That's an amazing skill set that you have, in that you understand how the business works and the marketing and all of that, but you're also doing the personal coaching. I can see how, as an entrepreneur, and especially as a female entrepreneur, having someone like you would be amazing, because you've been running essentially many businesses yourself within your corporate role. Elise, that was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
You're very welcome.
Is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners? If there's one sort of call to action or one thing that you think would be good for them to think about during these times and, the challenges they've got, would there be one little thing that you'd...
Yeah, I think, there's two things. Okay, the first thing comes back to a lot of what I've been talking about now, being kind to ourselves. Being kind to ourselves and cutting ourselves some slack, giving ourselves a break, and looking after those things that are really important to making sure that we can be in a good personal space. How is the relationship with ourselves? That's the first thing. And the second thing is kind of in the true entrepreneurial spirit. I love this question, but what does this make possible?
Yeah.
What does this situation that we found ourselves in, what does this make possible?
Yeah.
And I've asked myself that question in so many really hard times throughout my career, and there's something magical about it, because it just takes you away from the negative and it allows your thinking to open up around the art of the possible, and your creativity starts to kick in. And it's served me so well, and now it's really useful to my coaching clients too.
I love that. Maybe that I'm going to think about the title being something around that. Thank you so much, Elise. It's been great.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. And if anybody wants to connect with me, then my main platform is LinkedIn. So look me up, Elise Finn, on LinkedIn. Emmy was talking earlier about my YouTube channel. I've got
the YouTube channel.
I've got about 130 odd videos on my YouTube channel. They're all about 3 minutes long. So I create a lot of content for LinkedIn, and I love doing it because I love sharing the lessons from the last 30 odd years of my career, but probably more importantly from my entire life, because I've learned more maybe through my personal experiences than I have through my professional.
Yeah, I'll definitely so we'll put a link in the show notes to your LinkedIn, to your YouTube, and also to those two great tools that you mentioned, which would be fantastic. So
sure.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Elise. Bye.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Emmy. Thank you.